Welcome, Jill. Nice to have you on my podcast today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Arnold. It's good to see you again after the last time we saw each other was in Prague. So, yeah, it's good to connect with you again.
Yeah, awesome. And yeah, just to get started, could you introduce yourself? How did you get into iOS development? And what might you consider to make it professional?
Cool. Yeah. So, yeah, I have around a year of experience in iOS. I started programming in college. I'm from Miami, Florida. Um, and yeah, like it was, I guess, a bit of a coincidence how I got into iOS. Back in 2015, when I was in college. I did CS50X, which is Harvard's Intro to CS course. Um, my college was doing something that was like free, and it was in pretty close collaboration with Harvard. We actually got David Malin and some of his team to come for the hackathon and give a lecture. So it was pretty involved, and it was awesome. It's a great class for an interest to CS. But anyway, they were partnered with another company, and as part of the class and like the free incentive was some boot camp. I think it was like 4 weeks, and it just so happened to be iOS. It was Objective C at the time because I think Swift had just come out.
Okay.
So yeah, I did that, and that's where I met a few people that I still talk to today, including a really close friend and mentor of mine, who's at Apple now. And yeah, I did Objective C, but then I shortly dropped it because I went to college, I went to university, um, right after that semester, and then that's where I picked up Java, some Python, and I joined the competitive programming team at my university. So I was kind of focused on that a bit, and then I circled back to it once in 2018. I went to a hackathon. I think it was Shell Hacks and in Miami, and someone gave a Swift presentation or like a workshop, and I remember thinking like, wow, this is so cool. This is really like simple um, and it seems fun, right? So kind I spoke to the speaker after, he's also part of our Swift Miami community now in Slack, and kind of got into it. And literally, since like I was all in on Python at that time, but I was like, all right, well, I think I'm going to commit to Swift. And then I instantly reached out. Like I went to meetup.com, joined Swift Miami meetup, and then by chance, my friend that I met at CS50X, Ivan, he had my number. We had been pretty cool at the time, so he reached out because he's the organizer. So as soon as he saw me RSVP, we reconnected. And then since then, I mean, honestly, it was like a bit of a blessing because he just kind of showed me everything, and we would meet for lunch like every other week, and he'd just kind of be an open book with me. So it was a really good kind of it was a good way to get into iOS, and I got a lot of mentorship from him and a lot of people in my meetup, which I'm really thankful for. And yeah, since then, I got my first job as working with you in Prague, for an invoicing company. That was back in May of 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then,
I remember when you reached out.
uh,
I remember when you reached out to my
yeah,
LinkedIn.
yeah, I remember. Yeah, I reached out to you before because I was like, hey, so what's this interview process like?
Yeah.
I remember you saying like, oh yeah, it's really easy if you know the basics of stuff, which that was it's pretty accurate. And luckily, I had a project that I worked on, so I got to kind of drive the conversation a bit by just talking about that. And then I got offered a teaching job at OnRamp, who's partnered with Pandora Music. So I was the iOS teaching engineer for a few months. And now the 4 apprentices that I mentored and taught are now doing a 6-month apprenticeship with Pandora Music, which is a particularly awesome opportunity. Well, not only because it's like for underrepresented groups in tech, but also like it's an alternative entry because it's explicitly like, no college background, or, if you dropped out, and like no work experience, like kind of really just, as long as you have that growth mindset, as they call it, then, you're a good fit. And yeah, I still keep in contact with some of the apprentices. So that was a good experience. Now here I am looking for my next role. And I think that's a pretty good summary, but yeah, I'm happy to dive into anything.
Nice. So during this time, would you say that having a mentor like Ivan helped, was a very key to keep you motivated to learn?
I would say so. Yeah, absolutely. Um, it's really hard. You have to, I guess, learn to learn, as they say, right? So um, it like there was a lot of hand holding, right, in some situations, and sometimes I would just like, like when I find an interest in something, I go all in, so to speak. So it's easy for me to get distracted. So it was a really good thing to have, where, Ivan be like, no, hey, so if like an iOS job is your goal, then you have to do this. You have to work on an app, learn some more, prep for interviews. So, and it happened a few times, right? Probably more than a handful. So having that direction and someone who's actually gone through it, and he's been through his share of struggles as well, right? Um, like it's yeah, it was a huge help. And I think the biggest, like, one of the key factors um, was just having somebody you can reach out to, like when you're working on a project or you don't understand something, like, hey, I'm stuck, right? So I mean, we've probably had over 50 conversations over the phone. um, I can ask him stuff, and we've collaborated on meetup talks. So yeah, and he really just pushed to get involved and like kind of um, help people, even though I'm not some expert, right? You don't need to be an expert. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a huge factor in kind of where I am today, I would say.
So definitely you would advise whoever is learning to reach out to a mentor out there.
Yeah, more often, like, people are generally willing to help if you ask.
Yeah.
So Twitter is a great resource. Just starting to follow people. You live in I mean, really any major city, and I'm sure like various areas around the world, like there's probably a community nearby for Swift if you're looking for that. But even if not, right, you can join some larger channels and kind of just um, see who's like a active member, and kind of reach out if they're similar to your skill set, right? Kind of try to collaborate with them, try to learn together, keep tabs on each other. And if somebody more knowledgeable than you is willing to um, take their time to help you out, then that's great, right? And that kind of, I guess, it would definitely also help for you to help build someone up as well, right? So you kind of, for me, it was like Ivan would teach me all this stuff, and I would learn it all, and then I would kind of pass it down to, like, aspiring developers and stuff, and even people at my level. We kind of just trade off that information. So really, in short, I guess the collaboration, right, is important, because a lot of people, and myself included, before I met all these people, you just try to do it on your own, right? You get stuck, and then like, oh, okay, you don't really reach out to anybody, and it doesn't have to be like that.
And so during this learning process, have you built any personal apps in the App Store, or what has been your favorite project that you built?
So I don't have any app on the store. That's something that um, I want to change. Hopefully, with, like, now that you can build a 100% Swift UI app, and now that you can use grid layouts in Swift UI, um, and having worked with Swift UI in my job last year, um, I have plans to just start working on something, and hopefully it'd be great if I can get it ready to ship by the time iOS 14 comes out. But yeah, I don't have any apps on the store. I have worked on a handful of apps. I did some crypto watch list app. Um, I worked on some like food ordering style app at college last year with the team, and more recently a Formula One app. And yeah, that's the most recent project I've worked on, which I'm still thinking whether I should commit to that or do something new. Um, but I also built a Swift package for that REST API for Formula One data that I was consuming. I kind of just decoupled it from my project. And that's really the most recent thing I worked on. I released like the 1.0 version around like 2 weeks ago or so. So, and I'm gonna try to do a meetup talk later this year on that, because Swift packages are really cool. And there's some things I had to learn along the way. So I think it'd be great to kind of share that. But yeah, no, I'm really pushing to ship an app to the store, because that's, especially for startups, that's something that they really value, right? Having somebody that can ship, build something from inception to just deliver it to the store. I think that's provides a lot of value.
And so what has been the most challenging concept or topic to learn uh, in general with iOS?
Good question. Well, one of the more challenging concepts, or yeah, I guess concepts combine, so functional reactive programming, but that might have just been a combination of things, because I was learning it on the job. It had just come out
Right.
literally the week before to beta. So the company wanted us to work on a production level app with beta software, and if you used Xcode last year, when SwiftUI and Combine came out, it would crash. The compiler errors were wildly inaccurate. There was like very little documentation, if any. So that was particularly challenging, because typically right now, if you go to UIKit, try to learn some table view or collect and view stuff, you can find videos, articles, hacking with Swift, books, YouTube videos, podcasts talking about it, but that didn't exist for Combine. And Swift UI was pretty, that was a lot more manageable, because Paul Hudson went all out on the articles. So I got a lot of value off of his Swift UI by example. But yeah, Combine was particularly hard because there was no documentation. I had no clue what I was doing with reactive programming. It was my first exposure to it. And so like I had to like find people talking about it on Twitter that had drawn like RX, or like come from a JavaScript background or something. And I had to like read JavaScript articles to kind of just get an idea of the reactive, I guess, mentality. So yeah, that was particularly challenging, not only because I wasn't learning it in my spare time. It was like to build features for a app for a company. So there was that, I guess, pressure. So yeah, I think I would say that was the roughest time for me. But it was also probably one of the biggest opportunities for growth, I think I would say.
Yes. And I'm sure like, and now at this point, you must be really good at SwiftUI.
Well, especially, um, I'm I'm happy with where I'm at. There's still some, like honestly, like the frames, and there's like some hierarchy of the order that you call your modifiers for the views
Right.
and stuff that I'm still not an expert on. But um, I think this is less of my expertise than the simplicity of SwiftUI. Like it's so easy that like it, you can pick it up really quickly now that there's so much content on it, right? You can just start building some cool features pretty quickly. But yeah, I would say that I'm pretty happy with like where I'm at with SwiftUI. I could certainly watch these talks and look at the sample code and just kind of pick up where I left off pretty comfortably. So yeah, I'm pretty happy about that.
Yes. And let's talk about the interview process. Um, what are your thoughts of it, of the interview process for iOS development?
Uh, oh, so the interview for, so again, to reiterate, I had the job in iOS development where I was colleagues with you, and I did the teaching job. To, I guess the teaching one was an outlier. It's not really a common job, but the iOS interview that I had for the job was pretty straightforward. Kind of like, I guess, fundamental iOS concepts, and I talked about my project at length, so that definitely helped having done features in that I could talk about. But so as far as the general interview process in iOS,
Like white,
so
like
I
whiteboarding and algorithms, and system design.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I in the past like 4 months or so, because I came to Mountain View specifically because I had interviews signed up for iOS and I kept finding them while I was here. I must have spoken to probably like 50 recruiters in that span, and I got a good number of like second interviews, and I had 2 or 3 on-sites with some big companies. And yeah, so I have a year of experience, and I was doing some of the algorithms prepping, but a lot of it was, so I mean, I interviewed with like Apple, like a few teams at Apple, Amazon, Snapchat, and those were pretty typical. I would say about half the teams at Apple were kind of just like technical, like question answer type, no coding. Um, but I interviewed like for AR Kit, and that was like some vector, like matrix, linear algebra type question that I just is beyond me because yeah, I don't I don't have that level.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the more typical Amazon and Snapchat interviews were very traditional as you would expect, like algorithm, pretty rough. I got rejected for the second interview at Amazon or after that one, and I had the onsite for Snap, which yeah, it was like 5 interviewers. One is an algorithm question, um, one system design, one where I had to like recreate some feature in one of my apps. And yeah, I would say um, I guess it was because I don't know, like I hear about like system design and stuff, and I know I knew to expect it, um, but a lot of people had told me like, oh yeah, so like that's kind of like mid senior level, because particularly me in my experience, I don't have experience working in a complex app with like a lot of services and lots of communication back and forth, right? So it was, yeah, like it was definitely difficult for me, and the offer that got canceled because of COVID, it was pretty straightforward. It was very little coding, a lot of tech, like Swift questions though. Um, and I did really well on that one. But yeah, like the Snapchat interview, I probably did best on the one where I had to consume some data from some like news API and display it to the screen. I think a table view and a few other things in Swift. I did pretty well on that one. But like system design, yeah, I mean, I did my best obviously, but yeah, it was like kind of just, I guess you sort of need some world or experience for that, because it's such a vast and broad interview style. So yeah,
And so how do you like get ready for interviews?
that's a good question, because um, I was specifically like targeting the large companies in the Bay Area and stuff, which is just, that's honestly like late code and grokking the coding interview prep, um, the that crack yeah, grokking the coding interview and cracking the coding interview, um, that style. Really, you kind of do that, and if you're a good behavioral fit, you're generally going to get the job. But after doing that for a few months, I kind of like, so I interviewed at Porsche, and had to build an app over a weekend and present it to the team. And I did it in Swift UI, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. And I didn't touch an iOS app for like 3 months, which I guess is the irony, right? Like to get these jobs where you're going to be working in iOS, you kind of have to separate yourself from iOS. I was working with Python at one point just because at the time, and I think now in 5.3, it's no longer the case, but you could, like, tuples didn't conform to hashable. And so I tried to do some graphing question and I got that error, and I was like, I'm not going to memorize how to conform to hashable in a text editor. So I went to Python. So yeah, it's kind of, it's weird that you have to kind of separate yourself from iOS development and just do leak code style questions. But as far as my prep now, honestly, like I kind of adapted my strategy and focus. I'm not necessarily going, I'm definitely open to interviewing at larger companies, but I'm going to kind of target like more mid-size or startup type companies just because, I really enjoy, I guess, the art of developing for iOS. And I kind of want to keep doing that as much as I can. So, if the metric for startups jobs is kind of more on the app side of like, do you have an app on the store? Then that's something that I would have a lot more fun doing. And I mean, that's not to say to neglect like algorithms and performance, right? But honestly, I'd rather spend time building and shipping an app than grinding leak code 2-3 hours a day and kind of just reading about that stuff. So yeah, basically in short, I just changed my approach just to kind of target a different audience of companies. I guess we'll see how that goes.
Yes. Yeah. All the best of luck, man. And
Thank you.
yeah. And yeah, so let's go to the next section of the podcast. WWDC. I personally describe it as the Christmas for iOS developers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so it's been 2 days now of WWDC. So what has been your favorite talk or new technology that has come out?
I would say Swift UI, right? The updates, it's pretty. I mean, I guess I'm not experienced enough to say it's complete and ready to be adopted by everyone, but I'm personally very happy with where it's at from what I've seen. I mean, collection views are a huge thing, right? Like my my former colleague Sean from where we worked at last year, he built a collection view because I mean the restriction at that point was we had to use Swift UI, right? For whatever reason, we were discouraged from bridging to UI kit. So he built a custom collection view, and but then it's like you run into the performance issues. So it was, yeah, like now collection views are available and they're like lazily loaded, and there's a whole bunch of stuff. Like now it's a lot more kind of baked into kind of watchOS and Mac. So it's pretty exciting to kind of dive into all that stuff. And now knowing that you can do like 100% Swift UI project, that's pretty exciting. And I forgot the name, but like kind of where you can scan some QR code in a company or like at a store and kind of like have like a mini version of an app and kind of just do what you need to, maybe like order some food or whatever. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Clips.
App clips, right? Yeah. And then widgets are pretty cool too. So yeah, I mean, so many cool things. And I hear that there's a lot of combined improvements. So it's like, but they did so many good things that just, I mean, they already had like over 100 videos and they couldn't talk about it all. So I'm sure there's a lot to discover, but yeah, I'm particularly excited for Swift UI just for the, the speed of the development versus UI kit.
Gotcha. Nice. Yeah, it's definitely a lot easier to create a project for macOS, iPadOS, and iOS in just one project.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And this may be, I haven't really looked into it, so this might
Mm.
be a dumb question. But I would say, what is the difference between Catalyst and Swift UI?
Um, so that's a good question.
Okay.
I think so. Catalyst, I don't know, from I think the keynote or some talk that I saw, it's like once you build an iOS app, it's like 80 or 90% of the way there for like kind of the multi-platform Apple apps, and you kind of just have to add a little bit of functionality, like specific functionality for the platform you're developing for. And I think that's where Catalyst comes in. Um, I honestly, I mean, it's not a stupid question.
Okay.
There are no stupid questions, most likely, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, I don't exactly know, but I know that you can build a multi-platform app where it has like has a folder for like universal um, files that would apply to all platforms, and then you have like Mac OS or iOS specific folders that you can just add there that are targeted specifically for that platform, which maybe it uses Catalyst under the hood there. I don't really know, but yeah, that's my guess on it.
Okay. From my impression is now you don't really need it. You can just use Swift UI. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
and I'm also I'm like from I haven't done much watch OS development, but you know, if you build a table view in iOS, um, it'll look the way it does, and then if you copy paste that code into a watch OS app, it'll show you like it'll actually work right in Swift UI. So it's like the same code, it'll look the way it's supposed to for that specific platform. So yeah, that's a good question. Maybe you don't need it, or maybe if it's like very specific things. I know with like menus, like menu bars and stuff for Mac OS, and to add like hotkeys to operations, right? That's very specific to Mac OS. Um, so so yeah, I don't know, but all I know is that you build something, like if you build a table view in Swift UI, right? It'll work in iOS, watchOS, iPad, Mac. So at least there's that.
And what are your thoughts on the Apple Silicon?
So um, I'm not too like particular or knowledgeable about like hardware,
Yeah.
but seems pretty exciting. They were talking about a lot of like optimization improvements. And I'm sure a lot of benefits to kind of building it in house. So who knows? Maybe that'll mean like cheaper hardware as well.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's just a general net gain for Apple. So yeah, it sounds exciting. I mean, yeah, like honestly, like I was watching a lot of the State of the Union,
Right.
and there was a lot of stuff that is like, okay, I don't really know anything that they just spent 10 minutes talking about, but cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
And nice. So, and I was really surprised that there was no hardware introduced.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
So, so this is the second like dub week that I've
Okay.
experienced, last year being the first. Um, I don't remember if
Oh, there was no
oh
hardware
right, because
last
they
year? Oh,
no, I think that's where they announced the Mac, right? The Mac Pro
yeah.
with the monitor and such. So yeah,
The
no, you're
X,
right.
the
But
XDR.
yeah, but I think like September, right, is where like the updates to the phones and the MacBooks and all that stuff is revealed.
Right.
But yeah, that's a good point. That I mean, they introduced some hardware back in June of last year, and they did nothing this year. So yeah, that's interesting. Maybe they're just. I mean, I'm sure they're gonna update almost everything for September. So I guess we'll just have to stay tuned.
So, yeah, my guess is maybe the focus is just on software for WWDC. This is
Yeah,
still a
and
developers conference.
and I'm like I'm really happy or excited about the iOS 14 UI updates.
Okay.
Um, like Siri and like phone calls and stuff, they're not full screen, which is really cool. And like you can have threads for group texts. Just yeah, a lot of cool things. The widgets are cool, like the smart stacks, and probably even building our own widgets, right? And custom watch complications sounds really cool. So yeah, I know it's really and like obviously there's a lot of improvements with Swift 2 and combined. So um, there's just so much to just dive into, right? Right, and just I mean it's gonna be yeah, it's great, very exciting.
Yes. And have you seen any updates with Xcode?
I downloaded the beta. It looks pretty different. Honestly, I couldn't I couldn't figure out um how to just like show the console in Xcode. So I still have to figure that out. But yeah, it looked different. The
Okay.
font was different. Um, and yeah, I don't know, it just looked like modern, at least from like aesthetic standpoint. Um, yeah, it looked nice, but yeah, I mean, I did some like I copied some sample code from a presentation. Haven't delved too much into it,
Okay.
but yeah, it looks cool. I'm excited. Um, and yeah, like I mean, it's so Swift UI is so fast. It's like you can just develop so quickly on it. Um, so I'm pretty excited to look at all the. There's a lot of new things in Swift UI. So
Yeah.
yeah, it all looks like fun.
Nice. And so getting back to Swift UI, what are the pros and cons of Swift UI compared to UI kits?
Um, so I'm not an expert in either, but um, I guess what Swift UI can do, it can do quite well, I would say.
Yeah.
Um, but from what I've overheard conversations of like more senior engineers, right? There's a few things that you can do in UI kit that are either impossible or really hard to do in Swift UI. So that's kind of where it kind of starts to fail a bit. But yeah, it's just like you can just bridge to UI kit through like a UI view representable, right? So I I've seen there's no negative to it, right? Because if there's something you need to do, or if there's something that is really annoying to do in Swift UI, you just go back to UI kit. And now with table views and collection views and all this cool stuff being added to Swift UI, like that might be minimized, right? So you can probably do like 80-90% Swift UI. So yeah, I mean, I guess the pro or the con is the support, right? iOS 13 and collection views, etc., are iOS 14. So there's that. You'd be kind of cutting off a portion of your user base. But yeah, I mean, besides that, I'm all for Swift UI. I'm very excited. Um, I'm probably gonna spend most of my time with Swift UI. There's still a need for UI kit, right? So as far as like being marketable for a job, I'm sure I'm gonna have to keep up with that. Probably learn about compositional layouts for companies updating to 13 this year. But yeah, I mean, generally, like, I mean, I'm particularly excited and pro Swift UI.
Yeah, compositional layout. Yeah, have you used it yet? Um,
I did it. I built one back in December, but it was like very basic, and honestly, I don't remember anything about it.
okay.
But I just remember it being a lot more pleasant than flow layouts. I don't know if I ever understood flow layouts. I mean, I built a few collections views with them, but yeah. Um, but yeah, like I don't know. I just have to spend more time on it for sure.
Nice. And how would you describe diffable data source?
You're asking the wrong person because I haven't done it much either.
Okay.
Like a lot, honestly, the projects I've built since picking up Combine at work have used Combine. Um, though I did build my package with like like callback code,
Okay.
but yeah, other than that, like whenever I can reach for Combine, since I'm not a company, so I don't necessarily have to support any specific OS. So I just go for combine. I mean, it's fun.
Right.
It's cool. But yeah, like I haven't done differable data sources much. But I know that now there's like section snapshots. That's something that a lot of people have been really excited about. So maybe I should start learning a bit. I know I spoke with Donnie Walls. So, I think he works at Disney Plus iOS team, and he has a really cool blog, really high quality. Um, yeah, I asked him like, hey, so should I go watch the Dub 19 videos of compositional and differable data sources? And he's like, no, just read these two blog posts and you should be good. So I'm probably going to do that soon and then kind of dive into the new things. It'd be nice to kind of get a good overview before everything goes live in September. So that's my goal.
Nice. I haven't yet used that combine. How would you describe it for somebody who wants to learn about it?
Um, it definitely shortens up your code, and um, I guess depending on what you're trying to do, it can get pretty complex rather quickly to use kind of callback after callback, right? I know in the product we were working on last year, I was doing like some CloudKit, like invisible login, where you would get like your CK record ID. But then that was a callback function, and then I created a custom callback function that then did another one. So it gets really complicated depending on what you're trying to do. So Combine kind of simplifies that, where things are a publisher and they will eventually have a value. So and you can a lot of time you can kind of just consider it like an array or some value, right? Like, and because you can map on it, you can flat map, you can like if you're doing some networking stuff, right, with a data task publisher, you can just like map it to something, which I guess just data, and then you can do like decode. You pass in your struct, and then you pass in your decoder, and then it's already decoded. You could map to something that you want. And if it fails, you just call like .retry. You can specify how many times. You know, to do some error handling, you can do like try map, where if it fails, you can throw some custom error as long as it conforms to like the error protocol. Um, and yeah, so it just shortens it up. It's and like anytime you can kind of offset the load into like Apple APIs, right? Like they're gonna do it way better than I will. So just calling like one-liners to do things, it's very kind of it's basically like a pipeline, right? Like .map, .decode. So you're just kind of feeding it what it needs, and then you kind of erase to any publisher, because the types, as you add these combine operators, it starts to become it's like a publisher that like of like type flat map, and then map, and then try map, decode, right? It kind of that becomes part of the type. At least in simple terms, I don't know the exact terminology, but you can erase to any publisher, right? And then any publisher is just a generic publisher that is just kind of easier to work with. And at the end of every combine pipeline, you can just call .erase to any publisher, and then you're just working within a context of any publisher. So it's a lot. You kind of it's type erasing in the sense of like you don't care what the underlying implementation is. You just know that it's a publisher. It's gonna like produce some value or some array of values over time. So you kind of just focus on what's like important for you at that moment, right? So yeah.
And does it have like a result type of failure and success?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, and it's it's accessible through like a typical switch statement. So yeah, like eventually it's going to have a value. So there was an update a few months ago where there has to be a subscriber for a publisher to emit a value. So if you call a publisher, or you yeah, like you have to store it basically. And there's also an operator for that, right? At the very end, you know, whenever you're trying to like call some function that returns a publisher, you say dot store in, and then one typical workflow is you create in your class a set of any publishers, initialize it to be empty, and then you just do like dot store in, you pass the reference of the property of the set, and then it'll kind of persist it so that whenever you do call, it has somewhere to be saved. So then therefore it'll actually work. And yeah, I mean, it's once you learn kind of the workflow of like the observable object and the published property wrapper and all that, like becomes really manageable and yeah, quite straightforward.
And have you had the comparisons to RX Swift?
Um, I haven't, honestly, I've looked very little, like I haven't looked into ARC so much at all. But and they use, yeah, it's generally the same concepts, just kind of worded differently. I know RX uses observables and observers,
Yeah.
but those
Publishers
are
and
just publishers and
users.
subscribers. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really just the same pattern, just expressed in a different terminology. But yeah, like, and I know that and I'm certain Combine took a lot of inspiration from that and other reactive JavaScript frameworks. So really conceptually, everything is the same, right? It's like agnostic to the language or framework.
Yeah.
So kind of learn, you know, if you're coming from a JavaScript background, you know, some reactive, then, you know, Combine will be probably pretty straightforward for you. Yeah.
And getting back to Swift UI, how does it handle navigation?
So, yeah, as far as I know, um, you you can navigate through some object or opera. Yeah, just it's a view called navigation link. So you kind of provide the destination, and then there's some there's a closure that where you just provide what you want it to look like, whether it's, you know, like a button or a view or whatever. All right. So then whenever you tap it, it basically, you know, I I guess yeah. Um, No, sorry, I was thinking like how does it relate to a button or what's the difference to it? But yeah, so you know, use navigation link. As long as you have your view within like a tab view or um, a navigation view, because you obviously you need that UI hierarchy, right? You need to be able to like push and pop to it. So as long as your view is contained within one of those containers, then you can do a navigation link, and then whenever you tap that, it'll pop, you know, it'll push to this to the nav stack, very similar to like you know, nav controller or like just present, right? You pass in your view controller, same workflow, you're just putting your view that you want to navigate to within a navigation link, and then the rest is done for you. Yeah.
There are no headaches with that or anything?
So when I was working with you know, my former colleague Sean, he worked a lot with navigation links, and I think we ran into an issue where it was loading either a lot of navigation links or I don't know, it was kind of I guess unreliable. But again, this was during beta. So but I remember like when I worked with SwiftUI more recently, it worked pretty well. Now I think there was some discussions about like, you know, when the subviews load, like whether it loads right when you're looking at the main view or when you tap it. I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for that. But especially now with like iOS 14, I'm pretty sure that anything that might have been an issue is no longer going to be an issue for September. So, I mean, and it already looks a lot better than, understandably so, but like last year was really rough, and they intentionally released it early in production to kind of get that community feedback, which they got a lot of feedback. So now obviously it's more mature, and it was kind of a smooth transition. So now it's kind of just, yeah, it's like a lot more pleasant to work with, even though it's in beta now still.
Nice. And yeah, I also read that they removed the self because self is used a lot in SwiftUI.
Yes. Oh, I mean, because everything was like a closure, right? So
Right,
yeah, and that was, yeah, I guess it was just a kind of like clutter, right?
right.
Um, yeah, and
Now you
it's
could
so many.
just now you could just leave it in one place, and then you don't have to call the self
Yeah,
keyword over and over.
yeah. So yeah, that was like, I mean, I I get why you would do that, but um, it's nice to not have to do that, right?
Right.
Um, just like, yeah, it's a property in my struct, so just let me call it without self, and now it's gonna work. So that's cool. And now there's like multiple trailing closures, so that's pretty cool. um yeah, it looks pretty nice. I don't know, I like it. It looks
Nice,
pretty nice, pretty sensible. So yeah.
nice. And the other question is the navigation head, the navigation bar.
Hmm.
Is that are there any headaches with that or no?
You mean like a tab bar,
On
like a tab bar
on top, the
oh
navigation. Yeah.
no. Yeah, that's pretty
Okay.
awesome to work with as well, right? Like you use a navigation view, and then you can add buttons to it.
Yes.
You can add an array of buttons, and yeah, you can set a title. What I really like is, let's say you have like some sub view in Swift UI, um, or like a table view cell, just like right outside of like right before the final curly brace for your body property and like a Swift UI view,
Yeah.
you can just set the title, right? And you have to do it like as far as I know, right outside, um, and you just set your title there, and then it'll just work, right? That's basically like if you did like a view will appear, you set your title there, same thing. And yeah, it's really nice. I don't know if like I know like late last year there was an issue where in the simulator it would kind of appear buggy, like if you tap on the nav bar it would kind of like, or if you tap on a view to navigate to some other sub view, it would um it would flicker, or it would kind of just like move around. It just wouldn't look right. But pretty sure it wouldn't look like that on the device. And yeah, so no headaches as far as I can remember. I mean, honestly, SwiftUI is such a pleasure to work with. Yeah.
So they can easily add the left button and right buttons.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And the titles too. Large titles as well,
Okay.
which are enabled by default. I happen to like it was weird at first in iOS 13, but now, yeah, now I really like them. So that's
Nice.
kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets me confused. Like, when is the best place to use large titles? Like,
You know,
uh,
yeah,
my guess is like when the screen is not scrollable, you use a small title, maybe.
yeah, and you definitely don't want, and I think by default, right, if you start scrolling, it'll compress. But yeah, like one thing that I haven't been able to figure out is like if you have a particularly long title, it'll just add ellipses at the end, right? So it's like dot dot dot. Um, and then it's like, well, how do you know? And it also changes with dynamic type. So that's something that I can't really understand how to build for or support. But then also like large titles on an iPhone SE, which is already like the real estate of the screen is so limited.
Right.
It's like you have large titles on that, then I mean, geez, like that's like probably takes away, like a quarter of the screen or something, and it's already pretty small. So yeah, I don't know. That's yeah. Good question, but for like App Store apps on an 11 Pro Max, I mean, it honestly looks beautiful. So I guess there's
Nice.
that. Yeah.
And what about alerts? How are they handled?
Swift UI. Well,
And
um,
action sheets?
yeah. So Swift UI, I don't know exactly how, but I know
Okay.
really, I don't know. They clearly put a lot of thought into it, right? Because like, let's say you want to tap on a view, um, and it's like in a Swift UI, body property, right? You just do like dot on tap and you can do something, right? And I'm pretty sure you can have a, let's say you want to present a model or something, you probably have like some property that you bind to, and then you have some, I think like some like dot modal or dot, so some way to present it. I'm sure you can easily Google it, and then I think it's to some binding, right? So then it's like if it's true or false, you kind of show the modal, um, and then it's kind of just there for you. It's I don't know exactly, but I'm I'm very happy to know that I can Google it and find out in less than a minute, which is what makes Swift UI such a pleasure to work with these days. But yeah, they've put a lot of thought into it, and um, it's a very very nice API or framework to work with. Absolutely.
Yeah, and also looking at the WWDC videos, most of the examples are Swift UI. So it looks like
Yeah,
Apple wants developers to switch over Swift UI.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that much is clear. And
Yeah,
it's nice, especially I hear someone that you recently interviewed, Craig. He
yes,
develops for WatchOS as well. Um, he's great. He really like it seems like he got everything he asked for in as far as WatchOS improvements, and it makes sense, right? Like, okay, I mean, UIKit again, it's great, and I'm sure it does things better than Swift UI. But if you are developing for macOS and Watch, kind of just you can build a lot of the functionality in Swift UI and just kind of use it everywhere. So I think that's another big case for using it. So yeah, it's clear that they're pushing for it. So I'm all for it. I'm happy to play by that.
yeah, I'll definitely reach out to you or Greg or anybody else. I'm planning to start learning Swift UI within like the next month. So
Well, yeah. Feel free, and it's great to see that you joined our Slack. So Craig's really active there as well,
yeah,
and we've gone on some Zooms. It's just so nice, like kind of get into a community and everyone's just helping each other out. So yeah, like definitely feel free, come in, ask questions. I'd be happy to kind of give you a pretty good primer on Swift UI and Combine, since they work really well with each other.
yes,
So yeah, you can pick up within a day or two and just start building some really cool stuff with it. Absolutely.
awesome. And what's your favorite Apple product?
My favorite Apple product, I guess hardware, right?
Yes, hardware.
Um, huh. My MacBook is nice, but the iPad, it's nice. Being able to write notes, the pencil, and I use Notability, which syncs up to my MacBook and my phone. I can pull it up whenever I want. It syncs to iCloud. I think I would say probably iPad. Um, yeah, I'm pretty excited about the new one.
Right.
Seems like a good buy, and it has like the lidar.
Yep.
Um,
Right. Okay.
so that would be fun to mess around with. Um,
Okay.
but yeah,
Nice.
I guess the iPad. Yeah, but
Nice.
AirPod Pros are quite quite a product. Yeah. I use I have AirPod Pros.
Right.
I use them a lot, so I guess it's a tie between those two. Because I listen to music so much, so they have good quality, and obviously noise canceling. It's great. I have some noise canceling headphones as well, but they're pretty big, so this is just nice to have. Fits in your pocket. So
Nice. Yeah, those are pretty. I haven't used got the iPad yet, but
mm,
sounds like a really good product to have.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I would say so.
Nice. And yeah, talking about the LiDAR camera, what are your thoughts on AR?
I think it's. I mean, one reason why I'm a really big fan of I guess being a iOS developer is that there's just so much support for everything, right? That kind of appeals to lots of types of developers. It's so cool that you have an AR ready device. in your pocket. And I've learned a bit of ARKit, like a bit, right? Not much at all, some very basics, but it's cool that with like just a few lines of code, you can create a scene, add some nodes to it, you can tap it, reset your scene, and it's so nice, like the error handling, right? It'll there's a very clear way to detect whether you can't use the camera or it's not, or AR isn't supported, or whatever the case may be. Like it's so nice, and yeah, like it's really cool seeing what companies are coming up with as far as AR, right? Like you can put a you can, for example, like the Best Buy app or something, right? You want to buy a TV, you can just put the camera over your wall, and then see exactly what it's gonna look like. And I was at a friend's house. He had bought a TV at Best Buy, or I don't know what company, but um, he he showed that to me. I didn't know it existed, like that AR feature, but um, he he pulled up like the TV on AR, and he put it exactly where his TV was, and it was like a perfect like one-to-one match, as far as the size and all that, and even kind of shows you video so you can actually see what it'll look like. I think that's amazing. That's so cool to be able to just do that, right? In your iPhone. So yeah, I'm particularly excited for AR. I would love to kind of dive in a bit deeper into AR kit. It's just so powerful, right? I mean, yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that they didn't have a talk about it during the keynote.
Yeah, there's just so many things that they did this year, right? Like they couldn't even talk about everything, which I guess is a very good sign. But yeah, you're right. I wonder if I'm pretty sure they have an AR kit for video.
Yes.
Um, but that might be the only one that I saw. Um, but I mean, I'm sure they did a lot of stuff. I mean, people occlusion, like where you can have like AR like objects behind people, and it's like perfectly looks very, very realistic. um, it's just so cool. So many good things are coming out for AR kit. It's very exciting to play around with.
Lots of potential there.
Yeah.
Nice. And yeah, to close it off, just want to say, what advice would you have for somebody out there that wants to get started tomorrow? Oh,
It
today.
started today. Ooh, so I'm not okay. um I would say um you have to make things fun, right? I think that's how people stick to things and enjoy. Like you have to enjoy the process. So I would say, do some Swift UI, right? I mean, I wish I knew how to Google way like long before I did. Like you can there's if you learn, you just learn how to learn, I guess. But just Google everything and find communities, right? That's another big thing that I would tell people, right? Find the community. Yeah, good question. So I would definitely say start with Swift UI for sure. Um, you're looking to enjoy the process and just have fun with it. So I would say that the quicker you can get to building things that you enjoy, better. Um, and find a community, ideally near you, but it can be anywhere around the world. There's a lot of Slack channels that are open to everyone. I mean, like for example, my Slack is Swift Miami, but I mean, we're open to anyone, right? There's people from Europe and the West Coast, right? It's not particular to Miami, but that's really where most people go. So, yeah, I would say like having a community, right, that you can reach out to, um, and you learn a lot by teaching others. So, finding people you can kind of go on that journey with definitely helps. I've had a few people that I was learning alongside with, and that was a big um, catalyst for learning, I would say. But yeah, ask for help. There's no reason to get stuck on something for a week, right? It's just a waste of your time. Um, again, try to find it enjoyable or make it fun. And yeah, I guess learn to learn. That's one of something a lot of people say, and it's very true. Um, and yeah, don't get stuck in a tutorial trap, I guess you can say. At first it's a bit of a necessity to go through tutorials and all that stuff, but um, you want, as quick as you can, you want to start putting it all together in an app and connecting the pieces, because that's where a lot of the issues can arise. So you want to struggle through that and get past that as quick as you can. Um, and yeah, I think like the biggest, you know, thing that I did, or the best thing that I did, was establish a community early on. I joined my local meetup Slack, and people generally are willing to help if you just ask. So, um, the quicker you can kind of get over the fear of asking questions. I know it was like my tone dumb, but a lot of people are like that from my experience. I used to not ask questions. It took me like 4 months of being there. You always think, oh, this question is too, it's too easy or whatever, but like, no. Oftentimes you'll ask a question, right? And then somebody will be like, oh, wait, I don't actually know. Let me find out for you, right? Just typical. That's very common in a work setting as well. So ask as many questions as you can, engage with people on Twitter, see what they're up to, listen to podcasts. If your goal is to become a
Listen to
iOS
multiple
developer or trade, yeah, exactly. Podcasts like this where you just hear people talking about this stuff, right? You listen to, Paul Hudson's, Swift by Sandel, you know, yeah, just um,
and also there's
follow blog
Stanford,
posts as well.
the Stanford iOS course.
What was that?
The Stanford iOS course.
Oh, are there any iOS courses that I would
Oh,
recommend?
oh yeah,
Yes.
with Stanford. Have you looked at it?
Yes,
Stanford
and
University.
he just updated he started releasing videos for SwiftUI for this year's semester. That's a very good option as well. Um, yeah, and there's like, Kilo Loco, Sean Allen, right? Paul Hudson, he does Swift on Sundays, where he just builds something from start to finish and answers questions. Um, Podcasts like this one. um, Craig's book, I'm actually really excited for Craig's SwiftUI book. It's coming out right, I think the same week that SwiftUI or iOS 14 is going to be released. Um, yeah, he's written like 3 books already, and he's really comfortable with SwiftUI, and he's great designer as well. So I'm particularly excited to get through that book in September. So I would recommend picking that up as well, even if you already learn it by then. I know that even though I'm going to spend a lot of time in SwiftUI till then, I'm going to learn a lot when I get through it. So that's a big thing, and something that everyone more senior says, like, get into the habit of unit testing um, earlier than later. You want to at least be comfortable with it to some degree. Um, and yeah, then it kind of falls in the lines of like building more maintainable and kind of testable code, um, and yeah, like I think kind of trying to adopt that pretty early on. Not to say your first day, but kind of at least look into it a little bit. I think that set you up pretty well for later on.
Yes. And
Yeah.
yeah, just want to say thank you again, Gio, for coming on. I was super excited to have you on, especially that we work together. So you sharing your knowledge here today has been super exciting. So thanks for coming
Yeah.
on.
Thanks for having me. It was awesome to work with you, and be roommates in Prague.
Yes.
That was a lot of fun. So yeah, it's good to see you, and yeah, thanks for your
Yes.
time. It was a great conversation.
And what's the best place for people to reach you out there?
Um, yeah, I guess LinkedIn would be a good place. I could send you the link to that. I guess Twitter as well. Underscore Gio Noa is my handle. Um, feel free to join the Swift Miami Slack. We can add a link to that as well. And yeah, I guess I can give you my email as well, which it's self@gionoa.dev. Any place is fine. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. And thanks again, and all the best to you. Wish you all the
Yeah.
best.
Thanks so much, Arnold. Good talking with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Gio.